Hi there, and welcome to Inside the Wooniverse, a podcast brought to you from the corner of Fringe and Maine. I'm your host, Colette Baron-Reid, and joining us today is Dan Mangena. He's a well-known personal development thought leader, broadcaster, best-selling author, and coach. I love this man. He's awesome. I was so excited. He's super busy that he made time to come on the podcast. He's actually best known for his highly successful Micro to Millions program. He's authored the book Stepping Beyond Intention, and also for his Do It With Dan and Beyond Success podcast. I've been on one of his podcasts and he's awesome. Dan is completely self-made and has spent decades perfecting his world-class coaching methodology. Welcome to the Wooniverse, Dan.
I am happy to be here in the Wooniverse with you, Colette. I love you, yes I do. Did that rhyme? I think it rhymed.
That was
it was
good.
meant to rhyme.
Oh my God, that was awesome. Well, if you ever decide not to be a coach, you can also go on Broadway.
I'll work on it.
So let's talk about you like as much as we can. So I want to go back. I love talking to people about when they were little kids. So I want to go back because, you know, you have a whole journey that began, you know, with your family, et cetera. So were you always interested in the power of intention and mindset? Like when you were little, what did you see about the world and how it worked?
I wanted to be an inventor.
Oh.
And I always knew I was going to be a millionaire. So I was like really, and it's really, as I got more into my spiritual journey and started diving into that more, I started to put the pieces together, which I'll explain in a second. But I was like always coming up with stories and I was always like creating things and had these ideas. Like I worked out how I'm going to do this, do that. So I was very creative, but also very autistic and didn't know.
Oh.
And so I was always very much in my head. Yeah, I wasn't diagnosed with Asperger's until I was 27. And so up until that time, I'm very heavy on the autistic spectrum, but I was sort of trying to feed myself to be in the mainstream world. And so I didn't really have friends. I didn't really have like social stuff. It was kind of like my cousins, my sister loved me. My younger sister Lou loved me. So she would like let me hang out with her and her friends, or like people from my mum's church that kind of had to hang out with me because our mums knew each other. Like other than that, that was kind of about it. And that sort of changed later in life. But yeah, I was very much in my head and very, very committed to this idea that I was going to be really, really, really successful.
Interesting.
And that's something that was very, very vocal about. I don't remember a time that I didn't just have this certainty that I was going to be successful, maybe an inventor as well, but definitely very successful.
I think certainty is a big thing. Like I think for you, you just knew it, right? So it's the certainty that was internal as opposed to certainty external. Because if you were to look around your world, the way you just described it, there was no evidence
to support it.
There was like, well, I don't know about that, right? So I think, and that's one of the things that I love about how you teach too, is that the idea of it's not about the external certainty, it's about the internal, that, you know, that, and the trust and that real surrender to that, because it's true. It's like you are walking poster child for the inner world first, outer world second. So one of the things that I love about you and your work, we're actually friends and I've read all your books, etc. But you are deeply committed to helping people transform, and I admire that about you because you mean business. So where does the passion come from? I would ask, what are the biggest transformations in your own life that really inspires you? Because you've had a fascinating life.
Up until about 2 weeks ago, I considered my life to be a trilogy.
Ooh.
I just had a very, very deep transformational medicine-based experience a couple of weeks ago, which I shared about in the WhatsApp group. So I'm kind of like, I feel like I'm on the precipice of closing out book 3 and moving into book 4 now. But every single one of those, and for me, they're books and not even chapters because something, pivotal happened. But book 3 has been this journey of sharing my experience with people, sharing my life with people, sharing what's come up for me with people. But I really didn't want to do that.
Interesting.
Which is, a lot of people in my experience that do the work that we do, they had like an emptiness. So I was in the corporate world and I felt really empty and I had this soul's calling to do something different. I was living my best life, Colette. Like I was literally living my best life. And I'd clawed up. So, and we'll probably get to this, but I made and lost £2 multi-million fortunes by the age of 23, ended up in a really, really deep, dark place of suicidal
Slow down
ideation.
here. Slow down. I think this is really, really juicy stuff. Just slow down. Okay, we'll get to book 3. Let's go back. You're 23. Okay, come on now.
Okay, all right.
People want to hear this. They want to hear your story. So let's go to that whole 2 million pound thing by the time you're 23 years old.
I was that kid that all of my teachers were like, oh, this kid's going to be successful. He's going to be a millionaire. He's going to be successful. I mean, I taught myself to make computers when I was 13 years old, right?
Wow.
When I was in high school, I had like a tuck shop at the high school. Like I was doing deals with local businesses to sell them computers like when I was 14. Like, so that's what I was doing. So like I managed to amass my first million by the age of 19.
What?
Yeah, but I didn't have the right licenses for the company. And so it ended up getting shut down. So the company got shut down. So I was like, I'm going to go and do it again. So I went and did it again. I tried to be smart. I put things in other people's names. I'm like, yeah, you can hold that company for me and you can lock that bank account. And then people stole everything. I was like, yeah. So I ended up sort of losing everything again. But the thing is that the first time, and this is one of the beauties I think about, and I was even looking at the card pool that you did today. Was it Dolphin Spirit? I think was
the card pool is Dolphin Spirit. Yeah,
about the this and that duality.
Yeah,
because these dark chapters that closed out one book and moved into the next were actually some of the most beautiful things for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if it wasn't for some of these challenging episodes, I wouldn't have had the metamorphosis that took me into the next level of my experience. I maybe would have stayed the same.
Yeah.
Because I was an arrogant little toe rag, Colette. Like the thing is, I hadn't really had like a hit. Like there'd been bumps, but I hadn't really had any hits. And so as like a teenager who just like got the world at his feet and everything works out. And I mean, I was reading books like Think and Grow Rich and Psycho-Cybernetics and all this as a teenager. And I was using this material to develop a mindset that gave me the capacity to manifest and create all of these things. But all of that power without the guidance, the direction and the framework to hold it, right? And then you've got the arrogance of youth that we all had when we were young. But then when that's unfettered, because nobody can actually tell you what to do because you are the most successful person in the room, like it didn't create the best combination of the best version of Dan Mangena, let's say.
Right.
But so when I get to the point now when I've lost everything the second time, I no longer have the space to hold the delusion that I've got it all worked out and I know everything because...
had you known it, this would not have happened.
That would happen. And so I'm looking at literally the broken pieces of that. And I realized in that moment, oh my gosh, this vision of myself and this identity built up around the guy who had it all worked out and worked out the secret code to the universe, that's gone now and I have nothing left. And it left me in a space where I couldn't think of anything else I had to offer the world apart from not being here anymore. Oh. And that's what took me into that shadowy place. But here's where, again, the gifts come in, right? Mm-hmm. Because of my autistic brain wiring, I literally don't have the capacity to go and make impulsive decisions like I'm just going to go and have a suicide attempt. I literally was like, because everything has to be framed for me. Now I know, like the way my brain works. It's like, okay, so right, we're going to commit suicide. What's the way to do this? Okay, right, we need to, like looking at the options, it's like, no, that's not going to work. That's not going to work. And I literally sat there and I said, I'm a bit of a loser at the moment. Things aren't really working out for me. I need to make sure that I'm not a loser so that when I make my attempt, this works out. And this is the crazy thing. I didn't go into the journey that brought me out of book 2 and to book 3 and book 4 and where I am today because I was trying to save myself. I actually went on that journey because I was actually trying to be successful in ending everything. But you can't spend.
Amazing?
I know. It sounds really crazy, right? But you can't spend the amount of time that I spent. Literally, I learned to transliterate Hebrew and Arabic. I was going back over ancient texts. I was studying the life stories of successful people because I needed to understand, okay, everything had worked up to a point, but something had gone wrong somewhere. Is it because all of this is poppycock or because I've got it wrong and I need to understand it? And I became obsessed, completely obsessed with understanding it. This is around the time when The Secret came out. And so I was like dissecting that. And this is when like The Power of Now came out and I started dissecting that. And more people started talking about the law of attraction. And I've been in this game for half a decade plus already, maybe even closer to 10 years by now. And so I'm like bringing these pieces together because I'm coming more from the mental visualization, sort of literal using consciousness to create perspective. Right. And now there's more of like the universal law thing coming into it and then more of like the Hindu culture coming into it. I'm like putting these pieces together And I'm putting together this framework because I'm not going to fail. And the thing is that this is all like 2008, 2009. And the crazy thing is, I wake up one morning in 2015, 7 years later, and I realized I haven't thought about suicide in a very long time.
Right. You set it out
like
to
I could,
right. It's like, wait a sec. That was,
wait a minute.
I'm successful again. And that's not my agenda.
Exactly. I just got back from a trip to Thailand with my cousins. My business has been doing really well at that point. I had like one phone call in the whole time I was away. I'm living in a beautiful place in North London. I'm traveling to different parts of the world. I'm doing it at a certain, travel class. I've got my tailor, the watch collection started to build up again. I'm like, oh, what happened here? And that's when I actually sat back and started backtracking. Now, all of the notes and all these notes and these ideas that I'd been sort of using and putting together became what is now the book Stepping Beyond Intention. So that book takes you through the journey of the creation of the model and the steps and everything that I went through to get there. Mm-hmm. But I realized, oh my goodness, I literally went off to do one thing, but I ended up here. And then the journey to understanding that has been what I've shared with people and what I get to do now in the world.
Oh, I love that through line because I think, well, first of all, I love that you talked about basically all of the conceptual ideas of the law of attraction and then, universal law and the fact that you studied ancient texts because this is not the first time this has been written about. This is, but the idea that your humanity, like you can't manifest your humanity, that's in you and you have to experience the evolution. You can't just go like that and you can become a different person within reason. You can grow and evolve but you have to integrate the experiences. And I think it's so important to acknowledge that there has to be room for what we would perceive as failure because, people come into this and there's this whole blame and shame around, the concept of manifestation and it's very materialistic. And yes, you got all the material things, but until you actually integrated the relationship and recognize that there is this sacred dynamic between you and the conscious universe, this is something special, right? This is that we all have, but it is why we're here. And it's very little to do with all the material success. It's to do with the evolution of you as a spiritual being having a human experience and learning that suffering, like pain will come, suffering is optional, right? In terms of continuing to repeat the pain. But I think it's just really key that when people listen to your story, that's the thread that I got out of that. I'm like, wow, this is great because it's human. It is human, like the hubris of the teenager, the hubris of the early 20s. I'm so hot.
There was a lot of that.
There's a lot of that. And there is nothing wrong with amassing material things as far as I'm concerned. We live in this kind of a world that spirit chooses us to experience itself in the material world. That's just the way that is. But that can't be the main focus. So I think right? Like you were figuring out how to end it and reading all these things, which everybody says in all of the ancient texts that's a big no-no, right? We don't do that, right? But we discover the humility of that surrendering to this process, but still being part of it, that one step towards the gods and then 10 step towards us, right?
Exactly. And the thing that I love as well is that so many people lose sight of the fact that when you do focus on the inner work, like 2/3 of the game is inner game, right? If you look at the ancients, and this is part of my flow funnel framework that I talk about in the book and a lot of my work, this whole idea that everything that we experience in three-dimensional physical reality is the byproduct of a movement or non-movement through time and space.
Right.
Think about it. Everything that shows up. But that movement or non-movement through time and space or physical action, for the most part, is predicated by an unconscious pattern, habit, or belief that sits inside our unconscious.
Right.
And that is predetermined to a certain degree by the environment that 100%. Unconscious mind was cultivated in. And so a lot of us go into this whole thing of trying to fight our current pattern of behavior, fight our current pattern of thought, when all we need to do is remember that we didn't wake up. And the moment in time when I really got, so my son's going to be 3 in a couple of months. And I remember coming back from the office when he was about 11 months old. Came back from the office. I walked through the door and he looked at me. He started smiling and he was waving.
Oh my God.
And it hit me in that moment. When did he learn to wave and who taught him the context of the wave?
Right.
He can't speak yet. So nobody sat there and said, when someone comes through the door,
wave at them.
You wave at them to greet them. And I was like, he got that just by witnessing and observing that. Mm-hmm. And I also got this really deep compassion for the world around me as well, because how many people that have done something that annoys me or done something to hurt or harm me are doing it because at some point they learned that just the way that my son learned to wave.
Yes.
And it just became a part of who they are. And so when we understand how much of our environment, and I think the numbers are like 70% of those programs were done when we were completely unconscious anyway.
Yep.
And so if we just took the time instead to focus on cultivating a relationship with our inner being, with our emotional resilience, with our internal emotional state, with our inner thoughts through the environment that's supporting it, then there's a top-down trickle effect that happens wherein, hang on a minute, that emotion only leaves space for a certain pattern of thought. That pattern of thought only leaves space for a certain pattern of behavior. Hang on a minute, that pattern of behavior only leaves space for a certain pattern of life. And that's exactly what happened to me. I was literally pummeling my mind, polluting it positively over the course of 2 or 3 years. That's all I was doing. And so how can there be anything other than an inner emotional state, an inner mindset, and therefore a set of unconscious behaviors that matches that high vibration of input?
I could listen to you talk for hours. No. And you would have had a lot of fun this past weekend, by the way, because we're so in alignment. I know Connie was saying, "Oh my God, you and Dan are so 100%. In alignment, so in alignment." So I want to talk about that because you said so much, and I want to dissect it a little bit for the listeners. So because I think right now we have a lot of a comeuppance, if you will, in our society to see how basically social trauma has caused so many people to, depending on where they stand in the whole spectrum of the social order, if you will, that none of us asked for. It just kind of happened, right? So it's like, do we spend our time against it, or do we do what you said, which is to go within and cultivate something new? Because you have to recognize that I think we're all responsible right now to go to that place, every one of us, no matter where we stand on that board, if you will, to say, okay, these are my patterns, my ancestral patterns. And I'm like, okay, here are mine. So where is my responsibility to keep it clean, if you will, and not encroach on others? Because a lot of the behaviors, like my mom, for example, she was a Holocaust survivor and, was raised in a Christian family, excuse me. And her father, who came to get her, who was French, her parents were not married, actually. And he came to rescue her, to take her back to France. And the people who took her in told him she was dead. She was hiding in a closet. So, and the SS came and picked the father, who was a French resistance movement guy, plus he was also a Jew, right? So he was killed in a concentration camp. So my mom was traumatized, right? So her message was, it is not safe to be yourself. So she came to Canada, raised us. We were Anglican, which is, Catholic with no pope because of the King Henry VIII. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Good old King Henry.
Yeah, go King Henry, right? And I loved church. Oh my God, I loved it. And, but it was like this whole thing. So there's this, I don't know, but I see today, because I'm really conscious of my behavior, some of the things that were the limiting beliefs we talked about earlier about Shelley, who was on the show too. The idea that, I'm completely unconscious when I respond in a certain way. But if I can become conscious and aware and then feed it a different, like what you say, what did you call yourself? Polluting yourself with positive?
Yeah, positive polluting my mind.
And it's not about bypassing anything. It's about, it's about
curating the environment to support what you want to be. That's it.
As opposed to fight against the thing you don't want to be.
And here's the thing, Colette, to your point about not bypassing, you cannot actually definitively create a new holistic environment that hasn't addressed the healing and trauma that's there.
Correct.
You can't create a bypassed environment that's going to achieve this outcome.
No, it won't.
It's not going to work.
Because
you have to go through. You can't put what's the scripture? You can't put new wine in old caskets. I think that's the way that it goes. Something like that.
New wiring in old caskets.
New wine.
New wine. Oh, new wine in an old casket. Really? You can't? Oh, that's cool. No. Well, I don't drink, so I'm thinking about that. But I know what you mean.
But so this journey of creating that environment, like to your point, it's not saying, oh, I'm happy, I'm clappy, and here's my new environment. No, it's no, I desire to move through this trauma to create a new environment. This is a toxic relationship that I'm in. I'm going to create the space for me to be able to heal all of the toxicity, to introduce new loving components into my environment so I can go and be in a healthy relationship going forward. That's not pretending that you don't have poor money management and that's the reason why you're in financial problems. It's let me take a pause from the environments that are supporting my poor money habits, go and learn about new money habits as I start to create a new money environment that's going to give me a new money story and a new money experience.
Yeah, you have to go through it.
It's doing that together.
Yeah, and that's the thing I really got from reading your books too, because I really do think the biggest issue with the original or new thought, I mean, actually the new thought, because the original new thought never told you to bypass stuff, right? Back in the 30s or whatever, it told you to go deep within, but that there was, a greater consciousness. But I do think that was part of the problem and why people would feel ashamed, or they would feel like I can't change, because the minute you start to move into this new place, it's like when you up level, there's a new devil. There's like the old stuff is saying, you got to pay attention to me because I'm still wounded and I need your attention. So it's not like we stay in attention all the time. It's acknowledging it. So half the battle is to acknowledge it. Like half 100%. The battle is like, I see this in me. How could I make a different choice?
That witnessing.
The witness, right? It's like, this is true.
The witness. And to your point about the new thought and the new thought, I think it just struck me just now. I think the reason why maybe I do differ from people in my sort of, I don't know, my era with this work, because I wasn't raised on the new stuff.
Right.
Like I was reading the ancient texts. I was reading like the Charles F. Harnell, where you're actually doing diligent exercise. Yes. There was no shortcuts. There was no shortcuts with the old guys. I was reading Florence Scovel Shinn.
Yeah,
it's not shortcut. It's dedicated, diligent work. And even books like The Science of Getting Rich, Wallace D. Wattles. Like there's no mythical thinking anywhere in those frameworks. They are very much put the work in to become the person who has the capacity mentally and emotionally to move into the new state of being that's going to give you the new outcomes. And it's maybe not as sexy as manifest this in 30 seconds, that you see on YouTube. But,
because that's bullshit. Let's be real. How many people see
that work? I don't know anybody that knows that's working, because the shortcut that they're trying to get there in 5 minutes is not where the game is won. The game is won in the trenches. I was even thinking about this today when I was driving along. It's like, I can't think of anybody that's achieved anything of any significance that hasn't gone through a journey to get to that point where they have some significance. And yet people want to be famous overnight. They want to be successful overnight. They want to have health overnight. Oh, I want to get my 6-pack in 3 weeks. No, you need to go through the journey of like getting into the health. Oh, I want to find the love of my life today. Babe, you haven't dealt with your daddy issues. You haven't dealt with your mummy issues. Like, you're just going to take that toxicity into the next thing. But I think, a big difference between the older schools and the newer schools, I think, is that thing of putting in the work and not looking for
I'm the old school too. I'm all about the old school.
High five, babe.
High five.
Yes,
high five. And I also know too that there is, I also feel super compassionate for, I think you get there at some point when you realize that these new forms, listen, I think sometimes you do get these instant miracles that are just, that kind of, it's almost like, here's the crumb. Okay, stay on track. Like we'll give you a little gift. Poof. But then when you get the gift, you have to up level yourself to be able to hold the gift. Like you said, remember you talked about your
getting the gift and keeping the gift are two different things.
And being responsible to the gift. Right? People they say they want to be multimillionaires, but they don't realize that you have to now do accounting and pay your taxes and be really responsible for that and be that person who knows how to manage all these things. It's like, what are we making it mean? So I think now more than ever, your way of doing things is what we need. We need to hear that again. Here's what I did. I got all these instant things and it ran away. So now here's what I do where it has real metal. Like I am rooted. I root down, because that's what you do. You're next supposed to be root down with Dan, right?
And I love that, because the meditation that you shared with us about the tree that's going into the ancient tree, which I use a lot, by the way,
Oh, goody.
that crosses over, is having those roots that go into, not just into the soul, but to the depth of who you are, deep into spirit, deep into source, deep into connection, deep into commitment. That's where you get the strength and resilience to be able to deal with the storms, to deal with the circumstances that come up in life.
Yeah, and to trust too that it's like, there's a book by John Kabat-Zinn called Full Catastrophe Living, right? He teaches mindfulness, right? I love this, and I really think too, you want to sign up to the full catastrophe. You don't want to just have some of it, and I do think that we're all kind of like cats on a hot tin roof right now, because I do think we've been indoctrinated into the idea that chaos is everywhere. We should be afraid and polarized and all that stuff, which is, to me, I find that to be a fascinating distraction. Like, why are we being distracted that way? Who is distracting us and why? Because this is not helpful to anyone, right? So, let's go hang out with Dan. Because it's so true. So, and I love also what you said earlier about how, like, what we see in like the coaching industry is a lot of people, and I have clients like that too, who were from corporate that really feel called to serve, etc. So, I in my mastermind, I have that is actually really great for the transition into something, blah, blah, blah. That's what I see. But so that's a very specific kind of coach person, that's now sharing their epiphanies, if you will, from this structured environment. I never came from that structured environment. So I've always done my own thing. I've always, just because I had to. And so I understand too that the sense of freedom that we get because we do get a sense of liberation and freedom when we do the work that you're talking about, right? There is a liberation 100%. That becomes very real. And so where we come from, I think, can serve best the people who need to know it's possible, right? Because,
like you said, the journey serves people. It shows them the possibility, also shows them the steps to take, because we can gather so much wisdom from the trials of other people.
Yeah.
Like the challenges don't have to be your own if you're ready to learn from other people's. Although you have to go into an integration, which may require you to assimilate circumstances that will demonstrate your integration. But generally speaking, like, there is so much that we can give people by just showing them the fullness of the experience that we've had.
Yeah, and that's what I love about your book, because you don't shy away from any of this. Like, I think that's the other thing. Everybody just wants to say, oh, this is so great, manifest in 15 minutes. But you're like, yeah, and here's what happened. And then I failed. And then I fell on my face. And then I had to get up again, and I did it again. Only it was worse. And then, and then on the other side of it, here I am now. And I think that's so important. You have to give people permission for their humanity and for the fact that we're all going to fall down. I always call it the cha-cha, right? So the cosmic cha-cha, 4 steps forward, 5 steps back, 10 step forward, 2 step back, fall on your face, just shake your tail, right? Get back up, because that's what life is. So I want to talk about, because one of the greatest things that you teach about is step beyond intention, right? The concept of stepping beyond intention, because we talk a lot about intention. First of all, tell me what you see is, in the awareness work, what is an intention according to you? And then what is the stepping beyond intention?
For me, intentionality is the conscious disruption of whatever pattern we're playing out. So it could be, I'm seeking to break the pattern of habituation in my romantic life, in my health, or in my finances. Because if left unattended, I will continue. The law of perpetual motion is going to keep playing out the same way, right? The unconscious is going to be like, this is the script, I'm playing it out.
Right.
You can switch partners 20 times, you can have the same person in a different skin. You can switch diets, you can have the same outcome. You can switch jobs or businesses, you can have the same outcome. That's why people that win just win no matter where they go. People that have healthy relationships just have healthy relationships where they go. A person who's in alignment on health, it doesn't matter what fad diet or exercise routine, even if they're eating beans and chips every day, they're still going to have the same situation because they're aligned in that direction. As we said before, most of that comes from unconscious programming and so on and so forth. But when I say to myself, do you know what? No, enough is enough. I deserve love. I love myself enough to step into a situation that's more aligned with me being loved, cherished, adored, all of the things. I'm intending to create an experience where this is what I have.
Right.
Now, the challenge, and this is why we have to move beyond intentions, is that we're only conscious a portion of the time. I think the
Yes.
maths is 5 to 10% of the time we're conscious, the rest of it's unconscious. So during that time when we're conscious, we have to throw everything at creating and cementing and maintaining that alignment, which is where the environment kicks in, because when my environment's supporting me,
Yep.
then over time, that unconscious behavior is going to step up. And so my beyond intention paradigm, for example, is how do I create that intentional disruption?
Mm-hmm.
How do I remain conscious enough to be able to catch myself coming off target so I can get back on target? And we've got frameworks for that. And then how do I start to shift what's going on at the deeper level so that I can maintain that journey, so that I can move beyond needing to set intentions, because my new trajectory, my new autopilot is what I actually want to create, rather than what I feel I need to disrupt and move away from.
The new autopilot. I love that. I love what you talked about relationships. I remember too, I would have a series on and on and on and on. The same exact thing would happen to me. I would end up with a, unfaithful sex addict, or, I'd be like, a really charismatic, hot guys who'd be like off. And now I'm happily married for 21 years now. So I can say these things. My husband.
So it was amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing human.
I kissed a lot of frogs. What could I say? But until I found out that I was the one kissing the frogs, because I was always the one that was the victim. Look what they did to me. Or they would not be available. There was a whole list of things that everybody was identical. And I thought, but they were all different. And then I one day woke up just like that going, uh-oh. Right?
There's a common thread here.
I'm the common denominator. Oh boy. And then when that happens, right, then my environment changed, because I didn't date for a whole year, went to therapy. I thought, that's it, cleaning house, because I wanted to get to the point where you got to, which is I love myself. So I want to create that alignment. And I know that's right. That's something that intimately, this is what needs to happen. And then it happens, but it doesn't happen because you say it's happening. It happens because you take the action. And then you see, and then you take more action, then you clean up more, then you take more action. Ooh, it's not totally clean yet. Okay, fine. Right? It's like this polishing, and then you let it go. And then bam, one day there's that person, like, How I Met My Husband. It's just amazing.
And the thing is that I think when people start to fall in love with the journey to falling in love with yourself.
Yeah.
Versus demanding that relationship happens in a day. It's like nothing, and I really want whoever's listening to this, I even feel teary saying this, whoever's listening to this, to really just remember that nothing of value shows up instantly.
Yeah.
And in those rare instances, much to your point about miracles that show up, in those rare instances that we do see something of value show up instantly, it didn't show up, it was there all the time. My ability to see it showed up. Gold takes, it's an element, right? It takes time. Diamonds take time under pressure, but they have to be mined.
Right.
We have to move away the dirt. We have to sometimes put our back into it. We sometimes have to negotiate terms for the land that we're going to go and do the thing from. But ultimately, that work reveals something that was there all the time. But it took time for that thing to get to the place where it was ready for us. And we took time to get to that point of actually being ready to meet it. And when you fall in love with that journey, then you can start to see the dualism of life and be like, is that so? As Eckhart Tolle talks about in The New Earth, right? And then you can start to understand and fall into this whole thing of, maybe I don't have to suffer through this pain, but understand that even as I grew with pain. When I was there watching my son being born, Olga was screaming. And yet that screaming and that pain that she went through wasn't about suffering.
Yeah.
It was actually a signal that something beautiful was being birthed into this dimension. And when we can understand that, the game completely changes.
Yeah, right? It's like it's not creating a life that's devoid of pain, because that's
doesn't exist,
right? It's about it's about being present to it, and without trying to escape it, or to face it, to be present to it, and then to see who we become as a result of it. I always think of that about being broken open. I think it was Elizabeth Lesser's book, right?
Oh my God! I literally suggested that book to my friend 2 days ago.
Oh, it's wasn't that a great book?
I love the synchronicities I have with you.
We like all the same books. I know you and I like I have all those books, like Florence Scovel Shinn, entire book. Yeah. I just picked it, Winning the Game of Life, and then Wallace Waddles.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, all the old stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was about, letting yourself break open and knowing that there are, things that we've been indoctrinated in through our environment, through what we inherit. We don't even realize we've inherited certain traits unconsciously, etc. But we want to disrupt the pattern so that, I wonder, that's interesting. I wonder what could happen next. I wonder if I could be with this, and it doesn't happen overnight. And I think also surrendering the need for it to happen in any kind of time frame.
And the thing is that spirit doesn't operate in human time.
No.
Spirit operates outside of time and space, right? And it's actually only human constructs that say that it has to take time. And I know it sounds like I'm going back on what I said before, but ultimately, we are here to experience time. That's one of the reasons why we're here in this dimension. And so time is a part of the game. One of the things that spirit seeks to experience through us is the journey of time through the unique perspective that we have going on that journey. But the second that we do let go of the need for it to happen in time by committing to the time that it has to happen, it gives spirit the opportunity to seamlessly bring it in at the perfect time for both our evolution, spirit's witnessing and experiencing of three-dimensional space through us, and also our experience of what's going to come after it without the suffering that comes from resisting that.
Oh my God, this is such a great conversation. Yes, but I want to say, though, I want to punch a hole in the resistance, right? So because sometimes, we build muscle through resistance, right, as well. Sometimes that resistance is necessary for us to see the resistance, right? I think that it's great to have no resistance to everything, but I do think sometimes the resistance reminds us of some of the work that we still need to do, right?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And again, like for me, and this is kind of like this whole book 4 thing that's coming up now, which is kind of this work that I'm doing more with crossing over lucid dreaming and the nature of reality and all this kind of stuff. It's kind of where the realm I'm playing with right now. And it's this whole thing that ultimately resistance and non-resistance just are.
Just are.
Right? They just are. And so instead of me trying to be resistant or non-resistant, it's like just being in this place of playful, curious being, almost like, if I was a curious, divine, omnipotent energy that was just seeking to experience everything, how would I seek to presently experience this moment?
Yeah.
Oh, maybe I want to experience resistance right now. Okay, let's play the resistance game. Maybe I do want to play the whole thing of serial dating with handsome young men who are going to treat me a bit whatever. Okay, let's see what that is. And when I take the judgment out of it and just allow it to be, and remember that ultimately, because of the nature of reality, every single conceivable variation of my experience is happening in another space of consciousness anyway. And I'm just having this one. I can be present to this one and just see what happens.
Right. I love that. Curiosity is a superpower. That's one of the things that we teach people in Oracle School right out of the gate. We say that's interesting is our motto. Well, that's interesting. Well, that's interesting. I wonder what this could be. What are we making it mean? What else could we make it mean? Right. The idea, because we're meaning makers and we're pattern seekers. I mean, that's so. Exactly. And you talk about this in your book as well too. So let's segue into, because I love this conversation about gratitude. The concept of gratitude. Like you talk about turning the concept of gratitude on its head. Let's turn it on its head.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot more science to support this now. But for me, gratitude as an activity is a cheat code for reality.
A cheat code. Right? Oh.
No, because ultimately, reality follows expectation. And what I mean by that is reality, which is what I experience with my senses, which isn't necessarily going to be the same thing that the other person sees, because glass half full, glass half empty, like we all have our different perspective on the reality.
Yep.
So my reality is, it's mine, it's subjective to me, right? So I am always going to see what my brain has pre-framed that I'm going to see.
Okay.
Right? So, because even if there's a different configuration of atoms and energy waves collapse in front of me, my mind literally only has the capacity to see what fits the framework of what's in my mind.
Right.
That's the whole thing of, put a political conversation on the table, right? And just see two people looking at exactly the same facts and having different narratives, right? It's exactly the same thing. So what if I was to cultivate an expectation that what I desire to experience is actually going to be there? how can I start to trigger the chemistry in my body to front run that expectation? And one of the most powerful ways that's been consistently shown to do that in test after test, study after study, is being open. So the difference I say is being open to the possibility that it might happen and grateful even for that possibility, and then playing in that realm of possibility until it starts to sit a bit more comfortably. And then the more comfortably it sits, the more I start to sit with developing a deeper certainty around it until I can actually just sit and say, do you know what? I'm just grateful for the opportunity to even have this intention. I'm grateful for the opportunity to even see some of those breadcrumbs showing up and diving more deeply into those little experiences that I can start to anchor then in my three-dimensional reality until ultimately I get to the point where I can wake up 7 years later, right? And be like, oh, isn't that interesting? This is the life I'm living now. And then I can step into appreciation and celebration for what's been while harnessing that gratitude in advance for what I and developing a certainty of showing up.
See, I love that. So the idea, for me, that's all about trust. So,
Yes,
and being
100%.
grateful in advance, the idea that thank you. And it's true. Thank you for the breath. Thank you for the fact that I can even imagine this. Thank you for things beyond my imagination. Because I always go, thy will be done through me. And sometimes thy will not mine be done, given that I'm willful and oftentimes, right? We have a very, very limited view of what's possible, right? Because it's the unknown that tells us what's possible,
100%.
right? It's not us, what we already know. It's just So it's like being super grateful in advance and having that expectation that, wow, this is awesome. We have a great life. The way it's meant to be, it's like that. This is true for me now. And then it starts to be part of your body. Because what happens to your physiology when you start to feel super grateful? You relax.
Yeah.
And you get excited. It's like, wow, I feel so good. And nothing's changed, but who cares? It's changed in me.
But that must precede what changes outside.
Oh, I love that.
Because 2/3 of the game is in the game.
So how do you strike a balance between setting ambitious intentions and remaining grounded in reality? And what is reality? And maybe we should talk about what is the nature of reality, because I think that would be
we need a whole other one for that.
Let's go down the rabbit hole on that one.
Oh, wow. I mean, here's the thing. So I practice and I teach a system of cleaning my intentions.
Ooh.
And what I mean by that is the ego is a gift that serves a purpose and has a role. But like, even in our lives, there are people that come out of the role they're supposed to be playing to come and play another one, right? And if we don't have boundaries, then it will come and, do the thing. And so like when we have some of these intentions that have come from a space of ego, and I'm not saying that even in a negative way, I'm just saying from a place of ego.
Yeah.
It can sometimes start to fall into a bit of a disconnect from the heart and from the soul and from our connection to spirit,
right?
Our connection to the divine. And so the practice that I share with people is, let's just bring that intention into a space of divine connection and see what happens with it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, can it sit in the same space as my heart and still feel expansive? Like, how does it feel inside of me? And if it feels expansive and yummy, whether it's a Ferrari or building an orphanage in Kenya, right? Does it sit there? Because all of these experiences are valid. And this is one of the things I think can be challenging when we start to really take this conversation to the nth degree about spirit seeking to have all experiences. Because spirit seeking to have all experiences is spirit seeking to have all experiences, right?
Yeah.
But, that's a very dangerous place to sit. And yet,
but it makes it neutral. It makes spirit neutral.
Makes it.
Right?
Exactly.
Neutrality is something people can't get a quick grasp on that. And I know that's
because
true.
We as humans have our stories and we have our things, and I need to fight you and we need to have this combat. We need to have this separation. But ultimately, when I can bring an intention into my heart and see what it does there, does it put in those roots and start to grow? Or does it feel, like I check, even like when I like watches, and I do my friend Jerome's really got me into cars now, but like I'm a watch guy, right? Got a decent collection. And it's like I set goals, and it's like, oh, when I hit this goal, I'm going to treat myself with a little thing. Yeah. And it's like, I don't need any more watches. Right. I don't need any more, but I love them. But I still, when I see one that I like, right, I ask myself, does my heart really desire to experience life with this watch being a part of it? And sometimes I'm like, oh no, actually, no, I didn't. Actually, it was just, I'm good to just look at it, right? I don't need to bring it into my experience. It's the same thing if we look at relationships. You can look at a person or you can be around a person. You go, oh, yeah. But bring that person into your heart and see what happens. Sometimes you'll actually realize, oh, do you know what? I love this person, but it doesn't mean that I need to be in relationship with them.
Right.
Or in deeper intimate connection with them. Maybe. And just bringing any intention into your heart.
Yeah.
Something that you want to learn, something you want to do. It's like, where did that come from? Sometimes a program gets revealed. Sometimes a wound gets revealed. Sometimes like an old childhood trauma gets revealed. Just bring it into your heart and see what happens.
Yeah.
And that will start to create that differentiation between audacious goals and grounding and all the things. It's just that's a heart connected, soul approved, shall we say, intention. And that's the game I like to play.
Oh, I love that. So the nature of reality, I think, too, is very subjective, right? Because that changed
100%.
dramatically. It can change so much because you're seeing through a specific lens. I think that's what people have to remember, too. When we talk about reality, it doesn't mean what we read in the news. Oh, that's our reality. No, that's a perception that's being sold to us because, like, panic sells. Yeah, like anything that's extreme distortion sells. Polarization sells, right? I mean, it sells. It makes us look, it's like we drive down the highway. We might be seeing the most gorgeous sunset, and then there's a car on fire across the road on the other side. We forget all about the sunset because, like, let's look over there. Oh, cool, right? So that one reality, another reality. So I think I love the way you invite people into experiencing this. It's not, like, I love that you also brought up, this could bring up a childhood trauma, for example, and I do think that trauma is a under-explained, overused term
100%.
Recently. And only what I mean by that is because there's real trauma with a big capital T. And then there's the thing, it's just because you didn't get your eyelash on your eye that's not a trauma. Okay. So, but things that actually create behaviors, thought processes, and identity issues where you don't feel safe in the world, or you know what I mean? Those are traumas. And then, so what do you tell people? How do you invite them into that healing? Because I do think that, the collective trauma of, is actually a very useful conversation now for us to remember, oh, yeah, this is going on, so that we don't cringe and run away or make it our identity, because we're in process with that. Tell me how you manage that.
So my whole thing is, I'm really heavily influenced by the quantum model, because that perspective is where I really cut my teeth in terms of the conceptualization of manifestation, right? Yeah. Before manifestation was even the word, it was, conscious creation.
Yeah. I still use conscious creation.
Yeah, we're old school, right?
Yeah, we're old school. Co-creation.
Back in the day, it was co-creation.
Well, it is again.
Right. But it's like every conceivable variation of this moment is happening and not happening in this moment, here and not here at the same time. And the second that we can just really get that, and it sounds simple, but it means that I can't get anything wrong. I can't get anything right. I can only get this moment. And I can be fully present to source experiencing this moment through me, or I can be distracted and miss the moment. And then I've missed the gift of actually being able to be in this witnessing experience with the divine. And that experience may be me reliving a trauma. Right. And having to go through the game of that. And then maybe going through the game of choosing what I'm going to do with that. Because guess what? Whether I do or don't in this level of consciousness, there's another replicant experience of me that's taking every other conceivable variation of that moment. So I don't have to fuss and worry about those. I get to be present and bring into the heart what I want to do from this space of consciousness. And that's the game that I play.
I love that you call it a game. That's one of the things that I loved about Florence Scovel-Shinn that you mentioned earlier, because she calls it the game, winning the game of life, and how to play it, the game of life and how to play it. But I love the gamified version of this, because I often think, and I know that people are going to think I'm a little cuckoo right now, but sometimes I think we're like a board game, or like sometimes I've seen this fuzzy quality that I'm like, are we for real? Or are we like in a
Well, there's evidence to support that we are in a holographic universe. And
Right,
in fact,
the
I remember
holographic. Oh my God.
right. I was in Davenport last July.
Oh, you were?
There was this whole thing of the fact that we're like, if you look at how they're creating the metaverses and the AI and all of the virtual realities, they're modeled
Right.
on this, right? But it's a different density. And even if you look at this whole thing of them putting artificial intelligence in Sims,
Right.
those guys aren't going to know that they're not real. And when you start to look at like the work of Michael Newton that wrote The Journey Between Lives? Journey of Souls and Destiny of Souls.
Destiny of Souls. And then the Holographic Universe is Michael Talbot.
Talbot, that's the one.
Yeah.
And he's done, I mean, Newton spoke to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people under hypnotic trance and had common stories about this completely different layer of reality
Right.
that we return to. Just like if we were taking the headset off and coming out of a virtual reality. And to me, it's just like, I kind of fucks with that thing. And again, this is part and parcel of what I'm experimenting with at the moment, what I'm exploring and investigating. It may be a book, it may be another documentary, I'm not really sure. But I'm really fascinated with this whole idea of what reality is that we can actually put our finger on. And is it everything and nothing? Is it nothing and everything? Who knows?
And I think also it's really important that we consider, the concept of judgment, to take it, relieve ourselves of judgment. I always there's a prayer I always say, relieve me of the bondage of self so that I may better do thy will, right? The bondage of self is all about judgment and polarization and separation, etc. So if I am just to be present to everything, because sometimes we get taken hostage by ourselves, right? So the idea to be able to see through that lens of just pure potential and possibility makes so much sense to me. But then we fall asleep. It's like that spiritual narcolepsy. We just, here we are in our little, nope, that's the reality is very narrow. But I have had crazy experiences where I've seen this vastness of potentiality, and that's without any drugs, without anything, because, I can't take drugs or alcohol because I did too many when I was young. We can't.
You had your fair share.
I had more than my share. Yes, indeedy duty. But I've never, even just through breath work, I can step into that. I can't stay there because I think the other thing is that we're not created the way our senses are made, the five senses, the way we consciously see the world. There's a kind of like we're limited. But then when we get into that unlimited space, it's like, wait a second, look at how much else there is here. Like, wait a minute. And I've seen it. I've actually seen how everything is this grainy quality of light that it's so expansive. It's so much bigger than us. But then we whoop back into the body going, no. That's a hallucination. That's not true. But it is.
Yeah.
Because reality is made not from where we think it's made. And maybe one day in our lifetime, we'll be able to actually have a conversation and know for sure what we're talking about.
But the thing, and this is another thing, like with the whole game thing.
I'm open.
It's like, there are some things we're not going to know until we popped our clogs and actually left this realm of dimension.
Yeah.
There's just some things we won't. There's a whole conversation now about near-death experiences. Are they just, hallucination trips? Like, is it just, the common themes are just from collective consciousness, but really just, like, I don't know. But guess what? Does it matter?
No, that's the thing. Does it matter? I don't know. It doesn't.
And that's why it's like,
it's just interesting.
It's a game. And that's the thing. It's interesting. Oh, isn't that interesting? Versus, no, this is the rock on which I will die, and all of you who do not agree with it will die before me. Like, or it could be like, this is a potential thing. I agree that this may be the potential thing that's likely to happen. What do you think? Oh, wow. Isn't it amazing that both of our ideas can exist in the same space without either one of us dying? Right.
Right. And that is, and we're actually seeing evidence of that. If we were to, instead of taking the judgment taking the judgment away. Like when, for example, when I say, oh, there's polarization, I have a judgment about that, right? I'm saying, oh, that's bad. Like, right? It's like, why can't we all get along? Right? So, so taking that completely thing away, going like, well, that's very interesting. There are people with the exact same information making completely different choices and seeing things from a completely different perspective. And yet we're coexisting in the same space. At least we think we are. But it's so fascinating. Anyway, we could talk for 5 more hours, but we can't. We actually cannot. We cannot. So I do want to say one thing. One of my favorite things that you say is that people are already the miracle they seek. So just give me a couple sentences on that, and then we're going to pull a card together.
Okay. So a big part of my philosophy of life is that if we look at the concept of omnipresence and omnipotence and omniscience, there's no space for reduction within those frames. So if we claim that God, the divine source of the universe, is omnipresent, as in everywhere at all times, and omnipotent, that there's nothing it can't do, and omniscient, all-knowing, that means that there is no part in the limitless expanse of the universe that the divine is not, which means every single cell of you is divine. Also an expression of the divine.
Yes.
And when we actually hold the truth of that, then how can there be a miracle that exists anywhere in this universe that we're not in this moment?
Right. I love that. Oh my gosh. That's just, I'm going to play that over and over again, just listening to you say that. No, I could actually just call you at home. That doesn't mind. All right. So let's pull a card together. We are going to pull a card together and see if there's anything else the Wooniverse wants us to talk about. And then we're going to go into.
And my favorite deck. I'm obsessed with this deck, Colette.
I'm so happy.
It's the one I travel with.
Oh, you travel with the Dreamweavers deck?
I travel with the Dreamweavers deck.
I love that.
Yeah, I love it.
It's going to be an app soon too. I'll let you know when that's going to be on the phone. Yes. Because I know the art. Joel Nakamura is just the most extraordinary artist. Isn't he amazing? We have all his art. We bought the entire collection. And it's my whole house is this deck. I mean, everywhere I look, it's this card, which is great because I get a different reading depending on what wall I'm on.
Amazing.
Okay, so I'm going to pull a card and say, like, what else should we talk about that we know this audience that's listening to us today really needs to hear? When the storm spirits play.
Oh, I love that one.
Yeah. So, when the storm spirits play is really about, I'll just say in a nutshell, being the eye of the storm, to allow the chaos, just allow it to be true instead of fighting against it. How does it appeal to you?
I think for me, the thing that comes, and this is something that's been a common thread in my life, it's that every time that things start to bubble up, and anyone who reads the book will see that I'm not one of these people that pretends I've got all my crap together, that I've got all the answers. No, I'm going on a journey. I'm a human, right? And any one of those times when it kicks off, or this happens or that happens, like I just take a moment and remember, hang on a minute, stuff has happened before and I'm still here.
Right.
Right? Right? Like, things have gone not according to plan before, and I'm still here. What would happen if I sat with that truth instead of falling into the stories that emerge from maybe this being the time that it doesn't all stay here or whatever? And for me, that is the eye of the storm. It's that peaceful place amidst the chaos, the safe spaces in the midst of it, present to it, not trying to run away from it or trying to run through it.
Or try to make the world behave. And then you decide, I'll get there when the world behaves. This has been such a great conversation, but we're going to switch gears and travel into another dimension of the Wooniverse, and it's called the Tea Time After Party, a place where we kick up the fun just one more notch. And joining us now is my fantastic executive producer, Connie Deletti.
Connie.
Oh, wow. Dan and Colette. Dan and Colette. What a conversation.
Right?
Oh, my.
We should have done this for 2 hours. I think everybody, I didn't want to end, but we have
I know. I was like, oh my gosh, looking at the clock, like, no, don't end it. But I understand. You have a life to live, Dan, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, Connie, you start with a question.
Okay, Dan, if you could be wildly successful in any other profession, which one would you choose?
Comedy.
Yes.
That's interesting. You are
great.
pretty funny.
Yeah, you're very funny. Yeah. Get that next Netflix special going.
Yeah.
I think.
Well, you still might do it. Maybe you should be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I love it. Okay. If you could be any supernatural creature, what would you be and why?
Pegasus.
Why?
They get to fly. They fly. And they get to run. They're like super fast on the ground, but also in the sky.
And you're a horse.
I wanted to be a dragon, but people are always trying to kill the dragons. But I think it'd be pretty dope to breathe fire.
That's right.
Yeah,
Nobody would try to
kill
kill Pegasus.
No.
It's like, hey, Pegasus, how you doing?
And how about if you also breathe fire as Pegasus? That could be okay.
A fire-breathing Pegasus.
Fire-breathing Pegasus would be like the thing.
The thing.
Can I change my answer?
Yes, you can change your answer.
Fire-breathing Pegasus.
Done.
Boom.
Done.
Bam. I love it.
And
okay.
so it is.
Mic drop. Poof.
Which would you rather have? A pause button on life or a rewind button?
Neither.
Whoa, the first person that's ever said that. Awesome. We have waited for someone to say neither the whole time.
Neither.
Wow.
I don't want to rewind. Like, I've already lived those moments. I'm present to the new ones. I don't want to pause because I want to see what happens next.
Love it.
If you could live inside of a sitcom, or a television show movie, what would you choose?
The OA.
Oh, I loved that.
Oh, wow.
The OA. That was such a great show.
Wow. Didn't see that one coming. Wow. That was,
Yeah.
But only
I'd like that one.
Yeah, because you know what? It went a little weird at the end, right?
Yeah, it went a little weird at the end. But the thing with the octopus, I didn't really get. But I was like, okay.
But being the original angel.
The original.
Being real.
Being able to do the thing where they could do the thing.
Right, and the dance, and then all of a sudden, boo!
Yeah.
Wow.
I know. Ooh,
Yeah.
I love
Great
that.
choice. Yeah, great choice.
Very good. Okay, I love this. If you could have a magic power, what would it be, and what would you use it for?
Magic power. So my favorite superhero from comic lore was always Ozymandias from the Watchmen series. He was the fastest, strongest, smartest man on Earth.
Okay.
And the reason why I loved it is because the superness was actually reaching the full potential of what he could be as a human, rather than the need to have something extra. And so I feel that would allow me to fully experience the potential of the human experience, which for me is like a soul calling to actually do.
I think you'll end up to be that, frankly.
Yeah, I think so.
It's like, and then you're going to teach us normal people how to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
So if you were to create a magical potion for society to take, what would the potion do for them?
It would allow us, I feel, to remember that the separations that exist between us are completely illusionary. So not even to change your experience of life, but to have your experience of life remembering that this person that I'm planning to slap is really just me, right? This person that I want to treat with disrespect and outside of a place of love is really just me, or is the divine in form, right? This person that I want to steal value from instead of pouring into is just me, or the divine in form. If we could just have that, I think so much would change if we came at reality really understanding that all of these stories of separation are just stories.
I want that potion.
Yeah, I want that potion too. So far, Dan, we're signing up to whatever you do. That's just the way it is, right? Like, that's it. We're coming with Dan. Oh my gosh, we're ending our fabulous conversation with some silliness, but I do want to thank you. This has been one of the best conversations I've had here on the podcast, Dan.
I really had fun.
No, you're awesome, and you know you're awesome. You know I think you're awesome, which is also good. But anyway, for all you listeners here, to learn more about Dan, the work he does, his books and podcasts, head right on over to dreamwithdan.com. And as always, for a summary, quotes, links, and a transcripts of this conversation, visit us on our show notes page by clicking the link in this episode's description, by heading on over to itwpodcast.com. I love you, Dan. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Love you too. Thank you so much.
Wow.
Thank you.
What an incredible conversation with Dan Mangena. And what did we learn today? I mean, I learned about 1,000 things today that I needed underlined, but I think what I really genuinely got was that intention just isn't enough, that action and alignment are two things that are so, so important when we set our intentions to have an experience of life, and to recognize that life is not going to be devoid of pain or failure, that's all part of it. And Dan's story and everything that he shared with us and showed how we can overcome those things, but we don't have to bypass them or pretend they don't exist. I think that's really important for everybody to hear. We're human beings, not human doings. And to, set intentions to experience life in the material world. It's not all about that. It's about the inner world first, and the outer world then reflects that. So I want to say thank you to each and every one of you for listening. We know that there are millions of shows in the podcast verse, and you have decided to tune in here with us. And this episode marks the end of our 3rd season of Inside the Wooniverse. And after this episode, we're going to be doing something we actually have never done in 87 weeks, which is we need to take a hiatus. That's right. We're going to take a little break from the Wooniverse to stretch our legs, our minds, and our creative muscles. So in the meantime, I hope you continue to enjoy our podcast and maybe even listen to some episodes you might have missed along the way. There are some good ones. You can always find me and learn about what I'm up to at ColetteBaron-Reid.com. And of course, on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Now, if you really miss me, remember, I just kicked off another year of Oracle School, and I go live twice a month in my Oracle Circle membership community at cbrlove.com. I want to say a special thank you to Connie Diletti. For those of you who don't know, Connie was my producer on my television show, Messages from Spirit. How many years ago was that? 10 years ago? Oh my God, 10 years ago. Wow, 10 years ago. And we made friends and stayed friends, and Connie has been in and out of my world, and we always have a blast, and she is the best at what she does, no matter what she sets her mind to do. And I am just been so honored and privileged to have her as my executive producer on Inside the Wooniverse. And I love her so much, and I wanted y'all to know how much I love her. And of course, a shout out to Julie Fink as well, too, behind the scenes. She's done a fantastic job at editing, and you guys don't get to meet her, but she's a complete hoot. And we really have had the best time ever. So our little hiatus right now, we all need it. We're all fried. So I just want to say thank you again for listening. Again, love you, Connie. Love you, Julie. Love everybody behind the scenes that have worked on Inside the Wooniverse. And of course, all of you listeners, I love you lots. Thank you again for listening. Until next time, I'm Colette Baron-Reid. Be well.